to our spot. My name is Dris.
And I'm Cassie.
And we're so excited. We're officially launching our podcast, and this is our first episode, so we are really excited to just be here sharing with you guys our amazing idea through this podcast.
That's right. We've been planning for this, and now it's finally happening.
Yes, and our spot is what we would like this space to be is a safe space for community building. So we have a lot of different topics that we want to share with everyone, including like our own journey. And the goal is to help each other heal through community relationships and building. We have found that it is a very important aspect of life that sometimes gets neglected, just how much we need connection and relationship building.
That's right. I think also I just want to add in there that we do want this safe space so we can have kind of difficult conversations as well around topics that maybe, otherwise you wouldn't be able to have. And that's extremely important. And that's a big reason why we're here.
Exactly. And we're both very science-based people, so we are going to bring you guys some research-based information and articles, just giving you all as much information to back up the things that we want to share and the topics that we want to talk about. And our goals are honestly to connect with each other, share our journeys, help people find healing through pleasure, through joy, through the highs and lows and ebbs and flows of life, and ultimately, again, create safe space for these difficult conversations. So we're very excited to have you guys here joining us today.
And just to go ahead and introduce our first episode is friendship. So we're going to be talking about friendships today.
Yeah, and this is a really special topic for us. Cassie and I met not that long ago, actually, and we kind of feel like it's one of those people that you meet that come into your life for a reason. And it's been such a refreshing experience to have met somebody in your mid-30s, if we're in our mid-30s, well, early 30s, I guess. And finding, building relationships is pretty tough at this age. And we were really lucky to have met through a program called CODA, which is Codependence Anonymous.
Yeah, and without which we never would have met, probably. We don't run the fact that there was this community space where we met and fostered this really special friendship is kind of what brought us here in the first place. And so we thought this would be a good place to start.
Yeah, we met and we have just seen how our lives have benefited so much from that. And we wanted to kind of talk about, why are friendships important? And, we live in a society that emphasizes a lot romantic relationships. And we find that while, having a partner and having a family and that nuclear system of like relationship is important, we need people, and having others in our lives like girlfriends or guy friends is just as important to our health.
And I also I agree, and I want to add into that not only is all of that true, but it's also that we live in this type of culture that really I guess places an importance on independence and, bootstraps, like everything you do is yourself, right? And asking for help is maybe not a good thing, or saying that, you're lonely or you don't have friendships or whatever, that's kind of looked down upon. And so I do think that that's a part of it too, why, it's so hard to find friends. And we'll kind of get into a little bit more of, age factors and things like that, but I just kind of wanted to add that in there.
And that's a good point, because Western society is a very individualistic society, and we're going to touch a little bit on that later on as well, how some different cultures across the world really emphasize community building. I'm originally from Dominican Republic, and growing up, we everybody knew their neighbor. I knew who lived across the street. If I didn't have an egg, I could literally, my grandmother would be like, go ask so-and-so and if she could give you a pinch of salt because I needed to cook. And it was just very organic to know the people that you lived around. And those of you guys who live in the US, you know that that's not very common. We live in a very individualistic mindset, and it's just set up that way. And I think we're realizing how much it's hurting us. And I think so many people are actively working to kind of change this and create things like third spaces. That's something else we're going to talk about in a little bit. What is that? And how can we kind of change the environment, because it's affecting us more than we think.
That's right. And so why are friendships so important? I kind of just wanted to talk about some of the content out there. So according to the APA, there's this article that you all will have access to. It's called The Science of Friendship, and they have some interesting stats in there, and I just wanted to highlight a couple. So people with no friends or poor quality friendships are twice as likely to die prematurely. And research has shown that loneliness among people who lack quality friendships, romantic partnerships, or other relationships increases our risk for heart attack, stroke, and premature death. Really, there are estimates that loneliness increases the risk of an early death as much as 26%. And, again, this last stat that I wanted to kind of highlight is just that in 2021, 12% of U.S. adults said that they did not have any close friends. And I think that year is just relevant just because of COVID. I think that the isolation that everyone had to go through during COVID really kind of illuminated some of these issues and kind of brought to the surface these people that are, now doing podcasts about friendships and community spaces and documentaries and writing these articles, because it is something now that we can see as an issue.
Yeah, those stats are really important to look at and see its long-term impact on not just our health, but longevity and quality of life, right? I think a lot of people, the reason we go to the gym and we eat healthy, it's not that we're not going to die, but it's like if we're alive, we want to have a life that is qualitative, right? We want to wake up and feel good. We don't want to wake up and be unhappy. And I think the same thing goes with mental health. We've seen a huge surge in the last decade of the importance of mental health. And I think it's because people are realizing the importance of this to your general being. And this is just as important, having people in your life that you can connect with, that you can have authentic relationship building with, that is not just surface level, that is not just performative. And I think that's something else we're going to talk about a little bit, how social media has really changed the game. And I think that stat that Cassie mentioned, COVID really changed everything for us. And I think a lot of us have really seen the shifts when it comes to how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to the world post-COVID. It's a whole different world. And I think that says a lot to how much we're all trying to basically put our little grain of sand to create change, because we're noticing that the way that we're going is not going to benefit us down the road. And I think that brings us into talking about, why is it so difficult to create friendships when you're older? We listened to a podcast, Cassie and I listened to a podcast not too long ago. We'll also share that episode. And they were talking about how when you're children, it's so organic to make friends, You see your friends every day. You have a routine, a stability at school. And there's just a certain level of quality characteristics that children have that as adults we tend to lose. And yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit about that. Why is it so difficult when we're older to talk about those things and to make good friendships?
That's right. And within that podcast, because it's a married couple that's talking, so they kind of talk about that prioritization, right? So why is it so difficult as adults? Well, as kids, we don't really have very many responsibilities or obligations, right? Like our obligation is to take a shower and eat and play and have fun. And as adults, we have all kinds of other obligations. We're, tired all the time, and it takes effort to foster relationships. And if you have, a family and you have a wife or husband or kids, then the majority of your time is going to be spent fostering those relationships, which is extremely important, 100%. But you are not going to have the same type of interactions with your husband, with your wife, with your kids that you are going to have with your friends. You're just not.
Right. I agree. Our time is limited, right? Everybody knows if you got a full-time job, that's 40 hours in your week. If you have kids, if you have a partner, if you have pets, the time is so limited. So we're noticing, how can we find the intersections of these different parts of our lives and bring them together, where it's not like I am having to take out one Sunday a month to go have brunch with a friend and catch her up on everything that's been going on in life. And then have you ever gone to those brunches and then you talk for 3 hours with your friend and then you're left exhausted? And sometimes it's like, this doesn't even feel authentic. This doesn't feel like how a friendship should be. It's not as natural and organic as like when it was when you're a kid. Like you do life with your friends versus just telling them. So we want to talk about ways to collectively create those spaces, make it a little easier to create new friendships, but also on an individual level. What do we need to do as adults who are busy, who are figuring life out, who have a job?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of when we get into that, we can see, effort is a huge one, right? So what kind of effort are you willing to make to put into a relationship? It's like a plant. It's like anything else. You have to foster it. You have to nurture it. And if you're coming from a place of, oh, I just need to vent, and throw up all over you, then, you're probably the reciprocity. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you do have friends like that. Maybe they're great friendships. But to me, and the type of person I am, I don't want to just be giving someone my time to hear them throw up all over me. There needs to be reciprocity. And so I think that level of effort, I think it definitely comes into play.
Right. And I think that goes into how you show up for yourself is going to reflect, the types of relationships that you have in life as well. So for example, there's a time and place to vent, but if you're always going to be that Debbie Downer person, I think all of us have had that one friend that is just like always complaining and becomes more of like an energy vampire than actual like.
I've definitely been that friend.
I've been there too.
Yeah.
I've been there too, 100%. So when we talk about individual responsibilities, it's like, how are you doing the work internally to become a good person? And then ultimately also that's going to reflect in your relationships, right? Like, what are you doing to become more empathetic? I am personally a person who's had to really learn not to learn to be empathetic, because I think all of us are naturally born with that, but I've had to let go of. I go to therapy, so we talk a lot in therapy about things that you've done to keep yourself safe and protect yourself. So I used to be super judgy when I was like in my early 20s and very like critical as a very good Virgo that I am. And one of the things that I realized was I was using that judgment towards some of my friends and not using that judgment kind of like as a cover up to not be empathetic, because whatever my friends were going through, I couldn't sit with them. I couldn't provide them anything. And that's when I had to actually really learn, my friends don't need me to fix them. My friends don't need me to fix their problems for them. A good friendship, empathy is literally sitting in the dark with somebody while they're going through whatever they're going through. It's putting yourself in their shoes and really feeling what they're feeling without saying a word, without needing to give advice. And I had to learn that. Again, the empathy I think is already in you, but how do you show that empathetic nature, especially in a world that really teaches us to be so solution driven and so focused on the goal and the results. So that's one of the qualities we always talk about. I think it's important to cultivate in yourself. Like, how do you show empathy and communicate that empathy as well?
Yeah, I think communication is huge too, because you can see, again, it kind of goes along with that level of effort. Like how much are you willing to put in? And you can have friends as you get older. Again, this kind of goes into why it's difficult to maintain friendships and make new friendships. People move all the time. They get new jobs, and so if somebody moves cross country or across the world, we fortunately are in the year 2024 and we can do, FaceTime. We can do Skype? No. Is that what you said earlier? Skype?
I did, yeah. I was talking about Skype. That was like 2010.
Yeah. So we have all these different platforms that we can use to communicate. And I find, at least for myself, that that's a huge piece of friendships, right? So maybe I'm not seeing you every day. Maybe I'm not, going over to your house or whatever. But if we're communicating and just even checking in, how are you doing, what's going on in your life, that way if we see each other twice a year, we're not, I'm not unloading on you the whole 6 months that had happened previously or the year that has happened previously. We're already caught up, we've been communicating. And so I think that that's a huge one. And how you communicate, right?
Correct. Yes. I think that we're learning as well what courageous communication is, and speaking from places of I feel and letting go of, I don't know if you guys grew up in very passive aggressive households, but really communicating from a place of understanding what you're feeling without blaming the other person, right? Because everyone has their own life, and it's simple things. It's usually the simple things of, I didn't like that you did this, or how you did this made me feel this way. So communication. Another big one too is boundaries. Your friendships are a part of your life, and just like other relationships, you have to have boundaries. And if you don't have good boundaries within yourself, you're not going to be able to cultivate a healthy friendship. And especially when you're meeting somebody in their 30s who already has their personality, who already has their own life set up, if you don't establish what those boundaries look like early on, and if you don't even know what your boundaries look like, you're going to cause conflict. And conflicts are normal in relationships, which we're going to talk about conflict resolution as well. But having boundaries and knowing yourself and what you're okay with is important. For example, I am not a very physical person with my friends. I'm not a huggy. I'm not very like that. I think Cassie is a little bit more than...
I'm very much like that. So I don't like to be, every time we see each other, I don't have to hug you, anything like that. But I'm very much like a touchy-feely type of person, which is so weird because, you're the extrovert, I'm the introvert.
I know.
But that I am, and I find myself doing that to even coworkers and stuff, right? Where I'll just touch their back or whatever. It's just my form of communication, nothing inappropriate, or I hope it's not taken that way, but.
No, and I think that there are people who are more physical touch or express themselves that way. I personally am not, and it's just my thing, and I've had to kind of, not with Cassie but with other friends, kind of be like, yeah, don't touch me, and that's okay. Obviously you say it in a way that's respectful, and that friendship. But also I have friends who sometimes want to sleep over. Maybe that's cool with them, maybe one day, but you're not going to be in personally, I don't like people being in my house for 5 days or something like that. So again, boundaries on what a friendship looks like is important to know. I'm comfortable with this. I'm not comfortable with that. Hey, I need to actually recharge. I don't want to go to brunch. So again, all those little things are important to know yourself enough. And that's where that internal work starts off.
Yeah, I agree. I'm still a work in progress whenever it comes to my own boundaries. I don't think I knew what personal boundaries were until about a year ago. So I'm still, I've been on both sides, and it's difficult. I am very much an empathetic person, and so I'm also very codependent, and so I will try and solve other people's problems, and I will be that person that will listen, and I it's been hard for me to draw the line sometimes, but when, at least for me, my energy feels like it's being drained, or I feel like I'm not showing up for myself in the way that I need to, then that's kind of a really good indicator that I need to draw a boundary.
Right. And I think same thing as a recovering codependent, one of the things that we work on is not doing the caretaking and making sure that the relationship is a balance between giving and taking. And sometimes your friend is going to be in a dark place that they may need you a little bit more, but is that being reciprocated? And those are the things that you got to watch out. How do I feel? And that brings us kind of to our next point of self-regulation. Are you an adult that can self-regulate? For example, something that I implement with my friends is let's say I'm going through an anxiety attack and I need somebody to vent to, or I'm having a really hard time and I need somebody to speak to. One of the things I do is I ask them, hey, do you have space to hear me out right now? Because I have to respect the fact that what if Cassie, I'm asking Cassie to hear me out, but she's also going through her mental breakdown. So what's going on? Both of us have holes in our ship and are trying to navigate basically the waters while both of us are drowning, and it's not going to produce anything productive. One of us, it's going back to putting your oxygen mask first before you help somebody. So can you self-regulate without depending on somebody to do it for you? Obviously, you're still going to rely on your friend to maybe vent later on, but knowing yourself enough to know right now, what is it that I need to be able to feel better? It could be a walk, it could be water, it could be food, it could be a bath. But again, that self-regulation is always your own self-responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. And those things are attractive. To me, whenever I'm meeting people and, the friendships that I do have, people's coping mechanisms and what they do in times of conflict for themselves is something that I look at and, I admire, or I, want to try to emulate in my own life. I think that that's something that's important as well.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up the handling conflict, because I realize sometimes that is something that is not really done in friendships or talked about. I think I grew up in a household where things were just brushed under the rug and not talked about. And yeah, it's not healthy because it accumulates. And just like you would in romantic relationships, in friendships, you got to learn how to handle conflict. And how does the other person like to handle conflict? If they do something that upsets you, do they want to know right away? Do they want to give some space and time? And again, that's going to depend on the person. So, and I'll share, recently, Cassie and I had a little disagreement about the podcast. Fun, surprise, surprise. Uh-huh. But we were able to both kind of take space and then come back. And she kind of was like, hey, everything cool? What's going on? And I shared where I was at and I asked for what I needed and was like, hey, this is where I'm at. Let me get back to you in a couple of days to see how I feel. And she respected that. And it was really cool to see how our first little conflict in our friendship, we were able to navigate it. And actually something that we're going to sit down and do in the next couple of days is talk about conflict resolution and talk about, when it comes to doing different projects, because our lives intersect in multiple areas. So we have Coda, we have the podcast, we do other things as well. So when one area of our lives is having an issue, we don't want it to affect other areas of our lives. So we want to come up with a plan that's like, hey, we're having a struggle with this. How do we want to approach it? Just because when you're angry and you're emotional, we don't want that to be the reason that our friendship falls apart, because we really value our friendship.
Yeah, I think conflict resolution is huge. So understanding your own, right? And that also kind of goes into the boundaries. But fortunately, her and I are pretty similar. It takes me quite a while. I'm a little slow sometimes, so I need quite some time to process things, right? And I'm very much take a walk, sit with myself. Like I already said, I'm introverted, and process things. And also talk about it with some other friends. Maybe talk about it with my therapist, whatever. And then I'll come back to you, And I think that having those difficult conversations is something I'm still I'll probably working at that for the rest of my life, right? Like bringing up something that's uncomfortable in a friendship, in a partnership too, but just in a friendship, it's tough. You know, how do you approach the situation if someone's making you uncomfortable, or if somebody keeps coming to the same problem and you're like, dude, like do something about that, then change, you know, like how do you handle that? How do you come across to the other person as loving, and your a friendship also, you know, take care of yourself as well. And so I think those are things that, you know, you get to learn. You get to learn the other person in a friendship. You get to learn how they handle conflict. And you also learn about yourself and how you handle it, and you adjust, right? If you want to keep someone in your life, they're going to show you. They're going to not bend, but they're going to definitely be flexible with you, because no two people are exactly the same. So, yeah.
Yeah, very, very good points. But we also wanted to talk a little bit about the collective and societal responsibility. Again, going back to our point in the beginning, we talked about how, especially here in the USA, we live in a very individualistic society. And what that does is make it a lot more difficult to create friendships and create spaces where it's organic for you to meet people, and have a relationship that you support each other without needing to spend money, without needing to literally block out an entire day of your schedule. You can do life together. So for example, I have something that I like to implement with some of my friends is we call them errand dates. So me and my cousin sometimes will be like, hey, you got to go to Costco today? Yeah, we'll go and grab coffee and go to Costco together and run any errands. And while we're doing that, we're catching up. While we're doing that, we're making jokes. Sometimes we'll grab food. So like, it doesn't need to be this intricate thing where you have to go to like a brunch or a dinner or an event. You're doing life side by side. And we believe that just adds a little bit, it takes off the pressure at times to do things.
Yeah, and I definitely, I agree with that. I think whenever we're kind of talking, I mean, Dris will speak a little bit more about third spaces, because I'm not exactly familiar with, I mean, I'm a little familiar, but not as much as she is on like third spaces. But when we're talking about these things, and how to build relationships or make new friendships, these community spaces are extremely important, right? So meetup groups, you know, social media. I'm not a social media person. One thing social media is good for, right, is that you can be in the know about different spaces around you. But even if you don't have social media and you have internet, which let's hope that you do, or else maybe you wouldn't be listening to us. You know, you can look and you can see, all right, what's out there? You know, do I want to join a volleyball, you know, group? Do I want to learn how to cook? Or is there some kind of book club? Is there something, some kind of group out there that's doing something that I'm interested in, that I want to learn about? And there are free groups, right? There are hiking groups. There are all different kinds of things that you can do.
It's a space outside of work and home where you can gather with other people that are like-minded, that are in the same wavelength as you are, or whatever you're interested in. The only difference is when we think about third spaces, we think about them as essential parts of a community. So think about like community centers, public libraries, parks, not necessarily an establishment where you have to go and spend a bunch of money to get into. Restaurants are not so much third spaces because, again, they're tailored just to consumerism. Third spaces are more spaces where it's just like you just show up and there's people there. And I think about a lot like in Europe. I was listening to a vlogger who lives in Spain, and there is this, I don't know exactly where, there is a setup basically for parents to go out with their families or friends and have like a cocktail outside. And it's like it's like a strip of bars. And think about it like a courtyard. All the bars are aligned like in a square, and in the middle there's a huge playground for the kids. The playground is free. The playground is literally built by the state, the local community, and the parents are out there also enjoying time with their friends while the kids play. We know that in the US that is like very frowned upon. It's not safe enough to even let your kids play outside. So again, when we think about third spaces, it needs to be places that are safe. And a lot of them, we want to cultivate more of that, but there's some work to do here in the country to be able to get to that level. But it's basically those spaces where you can come together and just be without necessarily having to go the extra mile to plan things with your friends. It's things that you can find in your community. And it just be like an organic way of doing life together. And there's a lot of articles and a lot of research being done around why this is important. And that brings us to one of the documentaries we were watching about blue zones and how in a lot of cultures, the blue zones are basically these areas, these little pockets of cities around the world where people live to be over 100. And one of the main causes of that longevity in life is because they have community and they have friendships, and having that connection really, really enhances the quality of life, which then enhances their longevity of life.
Which makes sense, you know, and when we're talking about these other countries, these other cultures, that it's kind of embedded in them, right? And then I have a little bit of experience. I was going to say quite a bit, but I have some experience working with immigrants. You know, that's who I love to work with. That's my passion right there, is working with migrants from other countries in this country. And they are shocked whenever they come to this country, and there are not these spaces, you know, that they have in their other country. And one example is this woman years ago that was from Kuwait, and she was telling me that in her building, the women every single morning, they would make their bread together, like the community bread for the apartment complex. They would make together, and they would, you know, laugh, and they would joke, and they would, you know, catch up on whatever they had missed the day before or whatever. And that's how they got closer, you know. And again, not something expensive, not something fancy, you know, they're not going out on a night on the town and having to spend, you know, hundreds of dollars. But it's just this kind of task, like Dris was saying, where, you know, the errand, like they're just doing this, but they're doing it together. They're being friendly. They're being open. And that is so crucial. She needs a different outlet. We all need different outlets. And so it makes sense, right, that these friendships are increasing your life, essentially, your lifespan. They are kind of like a different kind of lifeline for you.
Right. And I love that you bring up the example of, you know, building community through making bread. And I think about, you know, capitalism and the current system that we live in. It's all about making money. And we know that, for example, an example like that, like making daily bread to give to your community, you know, that doesn't really benefit capitalism, right? It's you share your resources, so now you don't have to buy as much. But that's one of the questions we actually have, and we don't really have an answer to it. We're posing it to you all to kind of get your wheels thinking on, you know, how can we challenge the importance of friendship in a capitalistic society? You know, how can we create spaces where we don't need to spend money to be together and to have quality relationships? You know, whether that's building a community gathering in your local park, or setting up a weekly recurring virtual account for like people to hop in and talk about, I don't know. I think that's one of the questions we're posed with right now. We met through Codependence Anonymous, the CODA group. And it's an established time. It's a 12-step meeting. It's a small group, but it's been really, really nurturing for us to sit in these spaces and hear the stories of people who are also wanting to build healthy relationships, you know, but how do we take it further than that and do things like this? Can somebody, you know, create like an event where you get together on Fridays and cook together, and everybody brings in resources. Or like, let's say you go shopping and you go to Costco and you split, the groceries with somebody. I also think about, for example, if anybody is on Facebook, if you guys have heard of the Buy Nothing groups, that has been one of my favorite things. I like rave about it to everyone. I literally talk about Buy Nothing because I find it to be, let me explain what Buy Nothing groups are on Facebook. First of all, it's basically a community-based Facebook group where you join if you live within a certain radius in your city, and you literally just give stuff away that you don't want in your house, or vice versa. If you need something before you go to the store and buy it, you literally ask like, hey, does anybody have this before I go and spend the money? And at least for the community that I live in, everyone has been just so generous, so supportive. And it's been simple things like I've received so much from that group, and it also incentivizes me to even like give stuff away in my house. If I'm not using it, I'm like, you know what, somebody else can use this and I'm going to give it away. And I think a lot of back to my history in Dominican Republic, like my grandmother was constantly giving things to people. It's like, we're not using this, give it away. And again, that challenges capitalism 100%, because the goal of capitalism is to buy. So when all of a sudden you create different ways of living that now you're kind of bartering, thinking back to like back in the day before money was a thing, we bartered. And that's kind of what we're doing, except we're kind of giving it away. So yeah, I challenge all of you guys to think, how can we make the importance of building friendships in our society a thing? And how can we create spaces to kind of do that?
Yeah, and if you're a non-social media type of person like me, or an introvert like me, but you still need friendships, I can tell you again, just kind of putting things out, right? Like if there is something you want to do, then make it a thing, right? So the girls group night is like a thing that me and my friends started years ago. It started out as like a horror movie night, right? Let me say that again. Horror. Okay. I feel like I have to say it like I'm from Boston. Horror. I'm not saying that right. But anyway, so, it started off as this thing where it's like, yeah, you don't have to spend money as long as you can get over here and we can watch a movie together and shoot the shit, pardon my language, then that's all that you need to do. And of course we would have snacks and stuff, but nothing was obligated. Like, just come and hang out. And for a solid year, that it really got me through. We did that once a month and kind of dropped off after a year or so. And again, everyone, my friends are female, so a lot of them, have gotten married or have kids. And so kind of reintroducing it after a while and just being like, okay, well, I'm going to kind of make this evolve, see who's interested in doing this. And so I kind of created this group chat. And right now I think there's like 10 ladies as a part of it, and kind of made it like, okay, like how about 1 month you host it and 1 month you host it, like just different hosts every single month. And you kind of choose whatever you want to do. If you want to watch a movie, cool, that's what we'll do. If you want to play games, that's what we'll do. If you want to eat and have dinner, that's what we'll do, And I think that is, it can be a game changer. And even if you can't make it every single month, that option is there. If you ever want to get out, if you ever want to just have this community space, that is tight-knit, but still it's there, you can do it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that call to action. If there's something out there that you want to see happen and it's not happening, go for it. Be the innovator in your community. And you guys know there's a lot of resources. Coda, there's meditation circles, there's Meetup, the Meetup app. There's a bunch of also like online accounts now that create different events for the community. There's running clubs, sports clubs, all of those things that are free. So I think all of us collectively are really trying to challenge this lonely epidemic that I feel like our generation has been really struggling with for a little while post-COVID, but I would even say pre-COVID. I think COVID really just enhanced it all. And now we're really trying to find solutions so that moving forward, we can live a quality of life because we need each other. Ultimately, that's the goal.
I think, you've touched on everything. I think we've touched on everything. We really would like to hear other people's questions and thoughts on this specific topic. So if you're feeling anything in particular or thinking about anything in particular, please reach out and let us know.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your feedback on this. If you have any other ideas, I also would love to hear, what do you do in your communities to get together with your friends, with your neighbors? Let us know, because I'm pretty sure other people would love to also kind of get creative with whatever ideas you have out there. So we're going to put all of the resources that we talked about out there. We thank you so much for listening. This has been super exciting to be able to share our thoughts with you all. It's been a long work in progress with this. So we're excited to bring you more topics as well as more ideas.
It's been real.
It's been real. Thank you. And we'll see you next time at our spot.